Sadhu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Doing chapter 17, text 12. Text 12. I don't know if everyone has their books. They can open them up. Everyone hear me, or can anyone hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Okay, so we can chant after me. Abhisandaya tu palam. Dambartam api chaivayat. Vijate bharata shrestha.
Ichyate Bharata Shrestha.
Yagnam viti rajatam.
Tam Yajnam Vidirajasam.
Abhisandaya tu palam. Dambartam api chaivayat. Vijate bharata shrestha. Yam vidi rajasam. Abhisandaya tu palam.
Abhisandaya tu phalam.
Bhartam api chaivayat.
Dambhartam api chaivayat.
Vijate bharata shrestha.
Vijyate Bharata Shrestha.
Amyagyam vidi rajasam.
Tam Yajnam Vidirajasam.
I'd like to try chanting.
Abhisandhaya tu phalam.
Abhisandaya tu phalam.
Dambhartam api chaivayat. Ijyate Bharata Shrestha.
Ijjate Bharata Srishta.
Tam Yajnam Vidirajasam.
Tam Yajnam Vidirajasam.
Abhisandhaya tu phalam.
Abhisandaya tu phalam.
Dambhartam api chaivayat.
Dambharam avichayavat.
Ijyate Bharata Shrestha.
Ijjate Bharata Srishta.
Tam Yajnam Vidirajasam.
Tam Yajnam Vidirajasam. Abhisandaya tu phalam.
Abhisandhaya tu phalam.
Dambharadham avichaivayat.
Dambhartam api chaivayat.
Ijjate Bharata Srishta.
Ijyate Bharata Shrestha.
Tam Yajnam Vidirajasam.
Tam Yajnam Vidirajasam.
Abhisandhaya tu phalam.
Abhisandhaya tu phalam.
Abhisandaya tu phalam.
Dambharatam api chaivayat.
Dambhartam api
Dambharadham
chaivayat.
avichayavat.
Ijjate Bharata Shrestha.
Ijyate Bharata Shrestha.
Srishta.
Tam Yagnam Vidhi Rajasam.
Tam
Tam
Yajnam
Yajnam
Vidirajasam.
Vidirajasam.
Abhisandhaya tu phalam.
Abhisandhaya tu
Abhisandaya
phalam.
tu phalam.
Dambhartam api chaivayat.
Dambhartam api chaivayat.
Avichaivayat.
Ijyate Bharata Srestha.
Ijyate Bharata Shrestha.
Ijyate Bharata Sreshta.
Tam Jaggang Vidhi Rajasam.
Tam Yajnam
Tam yajnam
Vidirajasam.
vidirajasham.
Abhisandhaya tu phalam
Abhisandhaya
Abhisandhaya
tu
tu
phalam.
Param.
phalam.
dambhartamapi chaivayat
Dambhatam
Dambhatam
api chayvayat.
Vijayat.
ijate bharata shrestha
Ijyate
Ijyate
Bharata
Bharata
Shrestha.
Sreshta.
Shrestha.
yakyam virirajasam
Tam
Tam
Yajnam
Yajnam
Jaggang
Vidirajasam.
vidirajasham.
Rajasam.
Abhisandaya,
Abhisandhaya.
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 desiring.
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 Desiring
Two,
To.
To.
to
but,
But.
But.
what?
Phalam.
Palam.
result.
The result.
Damba,
Damba.
Dambha.
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 pride.
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 Tam,
Artham.
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 for the sake of.
For the
For the
sake
sake
of.
For
of.
the sake of.
For the sake of.
Also,
Api.
cha,
Api.
Also.
Cha.
Cha.
Also.
And.
And
eva,
Eva.
Eva.
certainly.
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 Eva.
Yat,
Yet.
Certainly.
that which.
That
That
which.
which.
That
That.
which.
Ijjate,
Ijyate.
Ijjate.
Ijyate.
performed.
Is
Is
for
Is
performed.
performed.
Bharata Shrestha,
Bharata
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 Shrestha.
Sreshta.
O chief of the Bharatas.
A
O
chief of the
chief of the
the
Bharatas.
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 Tam,
Tam.
Tam.
that.
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 Yagyam,
Yajna.
Yagam.
sacrifice.
Sacrifice.
Vidhi,
Vidhi.
Vidhi.
no.
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 Some,
or just
Rajasam.
Rajasam.
in the mode of passion.
In the mode of
The mode of
passion.
passion.
Translation. But the sacrifice performed for some material benefit or for the sake of pride, O chief of the Bharatas, you should know to be in the mode of passion. Purport. Sometimes sacrifices and rituals are performed for elevation to the heavenly kingdom or for some material benefits in this world. Such sacrifices or ritualistic performances are considered to be in the mode of passion. Let's read the translation again. But the sacrifice performed for some material benefit or for the sake of pride, O chief of the Bharatas, you should know to be in a mode of passion. So this here sacrifices that people perform now. I think in this case, they're mainly talking about like fire sacrifices, fire yajnas, something where you're doing some ritualistic thing. It has no benefit, like in a sense, like building a house, a benefit, you're getting the house, working, getting the money. When you do these sacrifices, it's not like something is clear cut. You do this and you get that. Although the sacrifices that were done years ago, you did a certain thing a certain way and you got a certain result. So these sacrifices were just done for, the ones in the mode of passion is for some material benefit. You want something material. Or for the sake of pride. So how do you do a sacrifice for the sake of pride? Just to show how great you are. You can do this wonderful sacrifice. And it's a very prestigious sacrifice and you did it. And so people may glorify you. So of course, Krishna is telling Arjuna, you should know these are in the mode of passion. If you're doing it for some material gain, you're doing it out of pride. And also it's interesting, he's the chief of the Bharatas. And now this is Arjuna. And there's Yudhisthira, who is his senior, but he's considered here the chief of the Bharatas. And maybe Ganapati Govind can tell you if he's on. I don't know if he's even on, but why he's called the chief of the Bharatas, maybe somewhere it says something. Of course, if anybody wants to tell me why, that's fine, but they have to back it up with some shastra. Otherwise, anybody can speculate on anything. Okay, so this is sacrifices. Now we can see this particular chapter is the divisions of faith, and they're talking about also the three modes of material nature. And in different parts of the Bhagavad Gita, the 18th chapter, we talks also somewhat about different modes of material nature. Everyone in the material world is in these three modes, mixed up with goodness, passion, and ignorance. Now, even the person who does these sacrifices in the mode of passion, it's not just purely passion. He most likely has ignorance. He most likely has goodness, but it's mostly in the mode of passion. So we should learn these things so we can see this is in the mode of passion. We shouldn't want to do things in the mode of passion. We should want to do things that are transcendental. So transcendental means we're doing it for Krishna. We're doing it for Krishna's pleasure. We're doing the sacrifice to please Krishna, to spread Krishna consciousness. That's to please Krishna. We're doing all of these things for Krishna. That's transcendental. But even if we're not doing something transcendental, we should at least do it in the mode of goodness. We should try to do things in the mode of goodness. So in the previous verse of sacrifices, the sacrifice performed according to the directions of the scriptures as a matter of duty. You have to do your regular sacrifice by those who desire no reward. That's kind of really important. Why are you doing this sacrifice? Most people do these sacrifices because they want something in return, but we shouldn't want anything in return, not for ourselves. We should want to please Krishna, that's all. And that's transcendental if you want to please Krishna, but no, for those who desire no reward is of the nature of goodness. So I'm going to read the next verse. I don't know if I should read it first, or if anybody has any questions. Better do questions so we can. Anyone have any questions first? Not comments, questions. Any questions? Okay, any comments?
Isn't it better to do sacrifice in the mode of passion than not at all?
I don't see how it benefits you. What do you get from it? Just get bound up more in this material world. Better if you just sit and do nothing. That may be considered the mode of ignorance. Better to do sacrifice in the mode of passion than sacrifices in the mode of ignorance. That's all better.
Gradation wise.
It's not good to do it. Why?
Yeah, it's going to bind you.
What?
It's going to bind you, like you said, no matter, it's not beneficial in the long run.
Not beneficial, yeah, and not even very long run. In just in the short run, very short run, it's beneficial. You get something back. Even this pride, what's so good about that? That's just bad. It just increases your pride. Then people think how great you are. Then you get even more proud if you're doing it out of pride. Of course, for the devotee, when people think that the devotee is great because he did so many wonderful things, he sees things properly that he didn't do anything. Krishna's done it. What can he do? He just made some effort. Krishna's done the whole thing. So he gives the credit to Krishna, or he gives the credit to his Guru Maharaj. But he doesn't take the credit for himself because he really genuinely knows what did he do? That's the way he thinks. Of course, we give them the credit because we see how surrendered they are, how much they only think of Krishna. So Krishna does do these things for them. Srila Prabhupada spread Krishna consciousness all over the world, not because he did all this himself, but he surrendered to Krishna, and Krishna made these arrangements, sent so many people to help him. No one person can do what he did. He has to have a lot of help. So Krishna sent the help. Why did Krishna send the help? Because he loved Krishna so much. he surrendered to Krishna. So therefore Krishna reciprocates with him. It's about reciprocation today. Anyway, his devotee Nityananda, he needed a reciprocal saw. So a reciprocal saw, I was thinking, it's a reciprocal saw reciprocates.
Reciprocal what?
A saw, it's a saw that just goes back and forth like this, and it's also called a sawzall sometimes. It's just a certain kind of saw. There's different kind of saws for different things.
Okay.
I lent him my reciprocal saw.
Oh, I didn't even know something like that existed.
And maybe tomorrow, if I can, I'll demonstrate how to work it, how you do it on. But I was just thinking the name reciprocal, that we have to reciprocate. Krishna reciprocates. So somehow by Krishna's mercy, when I heard the reciprocal saw, I thought of a little bit Krishna consciousness of how we should reciprocate. So Krishna certainly reciprocates. He says, as you surrender unto me, I reward you accordingly. And what did Prabhupada want? He didn't want anything for himself. He only wanted to spread Krishna consciousness. And he wanted to spread Krishna consciousness because this was the desire of his guru. Spread Krishna consciousness to the English-speaking people. And of course, Srila Prabhupada went way beyond just the English-speaking people. Spread Krishna consciousness in so many different languages. And it's in a lot of languages now. I don't remember how many. Something like 380 languages or something like that. I don't even know that many languages, but there's more. But it's, it's reciprocal. And the devotee, I mean, even with ourselves, when we surrender to Krishna and things start going nicely and preaching is successful, we can start thinking, because we're not pure, we're not fully surrendered, that and people are glorifying us for being so good at Krishna consciousness, at giving classes, at distributing books, at making devotees, or preaching to the devotees. So then people glorify us, and then we start to think, yes, that we start to think that we did it. We didn't do anything. Once we start to think we did it, then it kind of stops, it fizzles out. Doesn't really expand much more after that. That's why Prabhupada was able to spread Krishna consciousness everywhere, because he never thought that way. He was never satisfied, like, now I've done enough. No, he wanted the whole world to be Krishna conscious. He never stopped, always preaching, always figuring out ways to try to get people to become devotees. So if we don't get puffed up or proud that when we become very successful, then we become even more successful. But it's not us. And the more we see it's Krishna's doing it, and we don't deserve any credit, then the more Krishna does do it.
By that same token, we should also not get dejected, right, when we're not that successful.
Right. You should, but that's providing you're doing, you're really doing your best. You're really surrendering. You're doing everything you can. Then you have to know the result is up to Krishna. But you have to act as if the result is up to you. You act like the result's up to you. You do everything. And then if it's bad, that's Krishna's mercy. If it's good, it's Krishna's mercy. But if you don't act like the results are up to you, and you just say, well, the results are up to Krishna, and you don't do much, then you feel dejected because the whole thing failed, then that's your fault. You should learn from it and not do it again. You have to try. You have to try as if it depended on you. But ultimately, no, it's up to Krishna. Yes.
And when you said Bharata Shrestha, it reminded me of Prabhupada's disciple, Bharata Shrestha.
I don't think he was Prabhupada's disciple. He was Vidayananda Swami's disciple.
Oh, he was not Prabhupada's disciple? I didn't even realize that. You mean Pali Palmata's son?
No, he is, but his name is not Bharata Shrestha. So, yeah. What is it? Shravanananda.
Oh, Shravananda. Okay.
Yes, way.
Yes.
But he was Prabhupada's disciple.
Oh, Bharata Shrestha was the one who's to come to our temple.
Yeah, and he lived in Massachusetts. And he was married to
Dinadaya.
Dinadaya.
Oh, right. Dinadaya's
He was
husband.
Prabhupada's disciple.
She was the Prabhupada's disciple.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna
Okay.
Prabhu. This is Sundari Radhika. Please accept my humble obeisances. Prabhu, I have a question about depending on Krishna and not expecting any results. Sometimes, like in Prabhupada's case, he started the League of Devotees and then he had to go through so much opposition, and then whatever little he developed, that was destroyed, and then he had to go out of that place, and then he came here, and here also he went through so many things, like his typewriter got stolen and all that, and throughout all these obstacles he maintained that transcendental goodness, where he could uh, not get attached to the results, but continue to do the work that is given by his spiritual master. So, for that, what should be the training to be able to come to that kind of platform?
I think you just practice, when you can try, just think that way. Practice. Prabhupada said, if you can practice something, you can perfect it. So if we practice trying to see that it's, Krishna's doing everything. One thing is, I like the examples you gave, of Prabhupada, so many difficulties, but Prabhupada worked as hard as he possibly could. And none of these things turned out to be successful, or at least not none of them, but in the beginning, in Jansen and, the League of Devotees, and he tried to be successful in preaching to the United Nations in the beginning, and it didn't work out. But he gave it everything. He didn't get depressed that it didn't work out. He sees it as, I tried. Now Krishna has a different plan. Let me see if I could try to figure out what that plan is. And as far as in India, Krishna wanted him to come to America, preach to the Americans. He didn't want him to get caught up in just opening another Hindu temple, or not Hindu temple, but another temple. He had plans, and it was preaching. But Krishna, as Prabhupada says, we have our plans and Krishna has his. So we have to keep working as hard as we can, not get discouraged when things don't work out. Even Prabhupada got, you might say, got a little discouraged. He went to where the boats would leave, and he checked when the next boat is leaving back to India. He would check that just in case, but he never went on a boat and never left. But he just thought, maybe when nothing else works, maybe Krishna wants me to go back. So he kept, but of course we all know he stayed. One time, Bhakti Siddhanta also got you might say, it sounds like he got discouraged when he had one of his disciples he had given sannyas to, and then he gave up his sannyas and he went back with his wife. I'm not positive he went back with his wife or he just married somebody. I don't really know that, but I think he went back with his wife. But Bhakti Siddhanta was so upset. He told Krishna that, why did you encourage me to award him sannyas if you knew he was going to fall down? Why did you tell me to give him sannyas if you knew he was going to fall down? And then he said, I quit. Bhakti Siddhanta even got to the point where he quit. Of course, he didn't quit. He said it, but okay, what is he going to do?
It's like we all say that soon. I've had enough of you, Krishna. I'm done with you. And then we come back. I mean, of course, we're not Bhakti Siddhanta. I'm not saying to, at that level for him to say that. Yeah, that's.
Jiva just mentioned how it shows another thing that he had said. He says we have to tolerate, even when it becomes intolerable, still you should tolerate. So he's setting us an example. Even though it's intolerable, Krishna told me to do this, and then the person, falls down from sannyas, and he's the one who told me to award him sannyas. So why did he tell me that if he knew he was going to fall down? I quit. But so we have to not get discouraged. As long as we're trying our best, we know if we're trying our best or we're just not even trying very hard. If we're not trying very hard and it's not a success, we may feel a little depressed, but that should be because I should have tried harder. And now, even if you get depressed because you made some mistake, you should think, okay, now I'm going to try harder. Now I'm more determined. Let me try harder. Give me another challenge. I'll prove it to you. So we can still not get depressed, even if we messed up because it's our fault. We can try for another. I remember having on book distribution, trying to sell a book, and the person was a Christian. Now, I didn't know they were Christian, but I mean, most people here are Christians, but this person was like a fanatic Christian. They had no interest whatsoever, but they were like pretending or talking and then ultimately trying to tell me about Jesus. So I wasted a lot of time with somebody. When I say a lot of time, maybe 10 minutes, that's a lot of time when you're on book distribution, at least when we were on book distribution. So then what I did was I really got so drained. He took all my energy and I was like depressed. And I said, okay, Krishna, send me another Christian. I'm going to show you that I'm not going to waste any time. I won't waste any time, I promise. So then I went out enthusiastically, just trying to distribute. I wasn't really thinking about the next Christian that was going to come. But as soon as I got a Christian, as soon as I found out, I just didn't even say goodbye, thank you, nothing. As soon as I found out where he was at, I just turned away and walked into another person. I just left him there. And I felt really good. And it wasn't a Christian that was a Christian, had some interest. He was just trying to waste my time and just trying to, stop me from serving Krishna. And as soon as I realized that, because most Christians you can talk to, they're reasonable, but some of them are. Anyway, when you're doing book distribution, you kind of can learn after a while. And I just turned away, went to the very next person, and I felt really good. And I'm not positive, but I think I sold the next person a book because I know Krishna reciprocated. I tried to surrender. So I made a mistake, and then I didn't make that mistake again. At least not then. I don't know if I've done it after that.
But sometimes you never know. People you think will never become Krishna conscious actually end up becoming Krishna conscious. And people you think are like kind of favorable don't.
What's the whole point in not preaching to the faithless? Should I keep preaching and preaching and preaching? It's an offense to
No, I mean, I understand. You have to evaluate.
You know when someone is faithless. You have to preach to them first. You have to say something. You have to talk to them. You have to make that effort, even though they may be faithless. But as soon as you find out they're faithless, you shouldn't waste another second with them. What you're saying is you might be wrong about whether they're faithless, and that takes practice. Right. But you shouldn't waste your time with people who are faithless.
I've had one experience in my life where this person was somewhat favorable. He was into Buddhism and things like that. And I was preaching to him and I was thinking, oh, this person really might take to it because he was actually listening to what I was saying. Right. But then I realized he was really not that interested, in knowing about the philosophy so much. He just was listening a little bit, just to be nice. But then there was another person who was like having, barbecues of hamburgers in her backyard and everything. And I said, oh my God, this person is never going to change, and that person actually changed, So in my experience, that you never know, you might make a judgment that may not be right at all.
Well, you certainly can't go by what they're doing before they come to Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, you wouldn't preach to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
They're all eating meat. They're all taking intoxication, having illicit sex. They're all doing everything. But we approach them to try, and sometimes you see some people are sincere, or even if they're just a little interested. Prabhupada would fan the spark. There's a little spark. But when someone is just trying to waste your time, just because, like sometimes you'll get, what is it called? These telemarketers, and they just keep, and sometimes people who have nothing to do will just talk to them, but not buy anything, just waste their time, just to kind of get back at them. I don't know if anybody knows that, but there's some people who've done that. And once the telemarketers realize it, then they get upset and they hang up. But, so if somebody just wants to waste your time. I had a lady once, it was at the zoo in where was it, the zoo? I think it may have been St. Louis, the zoo in St. Louis. So we're distributing outside the zoo. And this one lady, I give her the book, I tell her this and that and everything, and I say, and it's just a donation. And then she took out a dime for a big hardcover book. I said, anything, whatever you want to give, She gave a dime, and I said, thank you. And then I walked to the next person, because I realized this lady knew us. She's had experience. She knows what we say, and she just wants to, take the book or make a big argument. So I just gave her the book. I approached another person. I saw the book, and then I turned around and I saw she threw the book into the trash can. So then I went up to the trash can, I picked it out, I took it out, and at that instant she turned around, and I looked at her and I said, I showed the book, and I walked back. So, and I sold it again. So I got maybe $5.10 then for that book.
I think book distribution is good practice for what learning to tolerate, what she was saying.
Did anyone hear Jiva?
Book
Yes.
distribution is good practice for tolerance.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's really good practice for everything. It's really good practice for really getting fixed up in Krishna consciousness.
Putting your false ego aside.
Yeah, yeah. Book distribution is the fastest way, in my opinion, to really get fixed up in Krishna consciousness, because it's real practical, not just theoretical knowledge. Practical how to live it, and try to. And then people come with arguments you never heard before, and then you have to come and think of what to say. Once you know the philosophy, then you kind of think of it anyway. Book distribution. Of course, we can't do book distribution now the way because of the coronavirus, but we can still try and distribute books other ways. Okay, any other comments?
Prabhuji, your realization is very correct. You said very correctly that person was not even Christian. I have seen that the person who is really either Christian or a Muslim, it doesn't matter. If they really have that faith, they always respect other religion also equally. I have the same experience I have. One of my friend in classroom, she was Catholic Christian. When I brought some prasadam to college for some event happened in my home, everybody ate. She also ate without any question. Another colleague who was converted Christian, and he did not even eat. He was a Hindu guy and he was converted. He started preaching me, no, it is instruction has been given to him that you should not eat any prasadam. It's like a sin and all. I'm like, how come the person who is by born Catholic and all, you both go to same Christian church and all, but she can eat and you cannot eat prasadam. So that kind of I feel like sometimes a double standard has been given to them, like they should not convert back to the religion or not come back to Krishna or Rama. So this kind of I have seen people do this, and I don't know why he never ate that prasadam. I was really shocked. He was from Hindu family. Just for some reason, he himself changed to Christian, and he did not eat prasadam.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the Christians who are real Christians and the Christians who are not real Christians both think that they're real Christians. You know.
Correct.
I mean, if anything, the ones who are real Christians may think they're not very much Christians. They might see their faults more. But yeah, I think because the Indian man, he's thinking, you know, that he's very, very weak. He's not, doesn't have self-confidence. Doesn't have confidence in himself. He doesn't really accept or believe that, you know, that Christianity is, he doesn't have strong faith in Christianity. So he's afraid to be tempted with,
Correct. So yeah. So as you said rightly, that it's always a faith in any religion. If you have, you can do whatever it's good for you. Even you won't feel something going to be bad if you are eating prasadam or listening something good, preaching or anything good, or reading a nice book also. Whether it's a Krishna book or Bible or anything, if you can read, you should not have a fear. It's not changing your religion right away. It's just you are making you a better person or doing something good. That's all I can say. But I was surprised about looking at that person. And he was my friend. And that day I could not tolerate him. Like I felt so bad for him. Like
yeah, that's crazy. He's a fanatic.
Yeah, sometimes converted people can be more zealots, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Pyari, you remember giving cookies to somebody and he was removing the magic dust off of it. Your neighbor or the flower guy, or I forget who you were giving the prasadam cookies to.
Giving the cookies to, I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know if it was your neighbor or the flower guy that you gave him some prasadam.
Yeah, the flower guy. Well, he's joking. He was joking because I told him prasad is food offered to God. He doesn't believe in God. He'd take the cookie, but he'd like get all the God stuff away.
The magic stuff.
But he's just joking. He was a nice guy, even though he didn't believe in God. And he didn't completely not believe in God, because he did agree that things happen. Like when you think a certain way, you act a certain way, even, you know, that like doors open up, things happen. He's seen some workings in this material world, how they like supernatural things, but he can't explain it. But anyway, that's, but I can tell you how foolish some people are. We went to, there was a Rabbi Dobin, his name was, and it was in West Hartford, and he was giving a talk on cults. So we went to his talk on cults dressed as devotees, and he saw us, of course, and so therefore he couldn't have questions where you just ask a question, but you're supposed to ask questions. So he had everybody write down questions, so he can just pick which ones he wants to answer. It was so, but one thing he said, he talked about, you know, like the Hare Krishnas, he says, you know, don't look them in the eye. If you look them in the eye, they'll hypnotize you. and this foolish,
that is true.
the foolish people believe them. Like they're just going to get hypnotized and become a Hare Krishnas by looking in their eye. It's like so stupid. But people are foolish, and they listen to their authorities. So the authorities know how to manipulate them. So on, so foolish. But this, you know, people you have to talk to someone who thinks for at least somewhat, thinks for themselves. They're just not influenced by people. I was distributing books downtown Boston once, and I approached some girl, some woman, and I'm telling her about the book, but some Christian comes and says, "Don't buy it. It's from the devil. Don't buy it. You'll go to hell." And then she turned to me and said, "How much?"
Why is that?
Because she didn't want to listen to this guy. She thought this guy was obnoxious, so she just did the opposite of what he said.
Oh.
Some people think that Christians are obnoxious, by you're going to hell.
Anyone here, Jiva? Probably not. He said some people think the Christians are obnoxious. So he helped me to sell the book, basically. Because he was, I had another Christian in the Chicago airport distributing books, and he came over to me and he told me, "You're going to hell. You're going to burn. You're going to burn. You're going to burn in hell. But I love you, brother." And I started laughing. He was enjoying so much me burning in hell, but then I think he thought I shouldn't think that way. So, but I love you, brother. Anyway, some of them are just they're just like little kids. They don't have much in the way of brains. Don't think much, not very intelligent, very simple. Even the scripture, the Bible is very simple. It's even what Prabhupada has explained, it's like sub-religious. Like the Bhagavatam just teaches about God and the devotees and the history of the world, big important things that happened with God and the devotees. And it says, kicking out all this sub-religious stuff. But in the Bible, don't kill, don't, what is it? Don't cover thy neighbor's wife, don't, what is, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not something, what? Steal, don't steal. Prabhupada said they in the Bible, in the Quran, they give instructions because people are doing that. In the Bhagavatam, the sages, sitting down and Parikshit Maharaj is the king of the world. He comes there, giving everything up. Shukadev Goswami comes there. And he didn't have to tell them, don't kill. It's like, why would he tell them that? Nobody's killing. Don't steal. Why is he saying that? So he didn't have to talk about these sub-religious principles. They were already following all of these basic all the rules and regulations. It's like that goes with their culture. They know that. They live that way their whole life from birth. And their parents lived like that. So and in the Quran, Prabhupada said, I didn't read the Quran, so I don't know, but it said somewhere in there that you shouldn't have sex with your mother. So he said that they put it because people were doing it. You don't say things unless people were doing it. You don't make some restrictions unless they're doing it. So therefore less, it's kind of a sub-religion, getting people a little bit closer to God. Just follow certain basic principles will help you to get there. Okay, well, it's almost time to end class. Any other comments or questions? I really was going to do another verse. I don't have to do another verse. I was only going to do another verse because it had such a tiny purport for this verse. Somehow or other we said a lot anyway. So anything else, or I'll do the next verse. I'm not attached either way.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Why did Lord Krishna address Arjuna as the chief of Pandava instead of Yudhishthira Maharaj?
That's what I said, chief of the Bharata.
I know I was trying to remind you. Yes. Why did he do
I
that?
don't know the answer. Oh, chief of the Bharatas, because, well, I can speculate, but I don't know. Arjun is the most closely related to Krishna. They're like best buddies, you know? So that in itself, how can anybody be more elevated than that? But I don't know if that's the reason.
Who was the commander of the Pandava army? Wasn't
I
it
think
Arjuna?
Bhim.
Was it Beam the commander?
Drishtadumna.
Nishtadum, yes, yes, Mataji.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so it wasn't Arjuna.
Draupadi's brother.
Mm-hmm. So I thought maybe because he was the commander of the army, he said chief of the Bharatas. But
No. I just, when I read it, I thought, why Krishna is saying it? And I don't know the reason. I'm very good at speculating, but it doesn't mean it's right. So I don't know the real reason. That's, you know, one thing I came up with.
yeah, he calls Arjuna with several different names, and it means something at that time, you know,
Yeah,
and
yes.
with each verse, yeah.
And I don't know. Prabhupada sometimes says it when he says things. And he does explain it, but in this case, he didn't.
Maybe one of the acharyas commented, but we don't have it.
Ancient days, like a lot of people were used to call by mother's name, like Kante, Radhe, even Yashoda Nandan to Krishna. People say Devki Nandan, Yashoda Nandan. But in Kali Yuga, it had changed completely. It's no longer with related to mother. That's also even during Rama, it's a Kausalya Nandan, Dasrath Nandan, we call it. But Ma was very primary for any child in the ancient age.
I mean, it's also, they say Nanda Nandana, you know, it's his father too. It's not just the mother.
Yeah.
It's both. Well, right now, in this age, it's more the, I guess, the father is the, but even in the Bhagavatam, if you read, they tell you the sons, all the sons of this person, like the daughters are hardly mentioned. Some daughters are mentioned. It's a man's world,
It says it's one of the dynasty names.
which a lot of women, you know, getting they don't like that too much. I'm not saying it's a man's world. I'm just joking, of course, that does say a lot of those things in the Bhagavatam. And part of it is because the men at that time were like really pure devotees or surrendered souls. So the woman, you know, she just gets attached to a husband who's a perfect being. She goes back home, back to Godhead. But now both men and women are, you know, Kalo Shudra Sambhava. Everyone is born a Shudra in this age.
I was just thinking, now the women say, don't expect me to be a Sita when you're no Ramachandra. You didn't get the joke.
Okay, we got 10 minutes. I'll read the next verse. Vidihinam astanam mantrahinam adakshinam shada virahitam yagyam tamasam parichakshate. Any sacrifice performed without regard for the direction of scripture, without distribution of prasadam, without chanting of Vedic hymns and remunerations of the priests, and without faith without faith is considered to be in the mode of ignorance. This actually says a lot. Oh, I could read it there. Faith in the mode of darkness or ignorance is actually faithlessness. Sometimes people worship some demigod just to make money and then spend the money for recreation, ignoring the scriptural injunctions. Such ceremonial shows of religiosity are not accepted as genuine. They are all in the mode of darkness. They produce a demoniac mentality and do not benefit human society. So you don't do sacrifice in the mode of ignorance. But I just like the verse itself where it says, any sacrifice performed without regard for the directions of the scripture. So that's the first thing. You have to follow scripture when you're doing sacrifices. Then, without distribution of prasadam, you have to distribute prasadam at every sacrifice. Even if it's just a little something, any little prasadam is fine. Even if it's just a piece of a cut up orange or apple, that's fine. But you have to distribute prasadam. Without chanting of Vedic hymns, so you have to chant Vedic mantras, even you have to have kirtans. Every time we do a sacrifice, it's always kirtan. Without a kirtan, it's not going to be a success. And remunerations up to the priest. You actually have to give something to the priest, not just like if you do it at the temple, you pay the temple, you have to give something to the priest. It's like give him a tip, but you give something to the priest. And without faith, so you're doing all this, but you don't really believe it, but you're doing it. That's also in the mode of ignorance. It's considered to be in the mode of ignorance. So it's interesting, what is faith? Faith in the mode of ignorance, in the mode of darkness or ignorance, is actually faithlessness. They don't have faith. That's the mode of ignorance, is you don't have no faith. And sometimes people worship some demigod just to make money. We used to see, I don't know if at the Satyanarayan pujas, people are there because they want something. That's in the mode of ignorance, according to this. You're doing it to get some material thing, but it might be the mode of passion, because that seemed like passion too. So to get some material benefit is the mode of passion. And here you worship some demigod just to make money and then spend the money for recreation. So that's a little difference. So basically recreation is just wasting the money. So if you worship some demigod and then you get the result and you use it good for something good, you worship to get something good, that's the mode of passion. But you worship and you get something and then you use it, just throw it away, wasting it, having fun in Las Vegas, that's the mode of ignorance. It's ignoring the scriptural injunctions. So the scriptural, anyway, we don't do any of these sacrifices for getting something material. Even in the Vedas, even in the Bhagavatam, there's so many sacrifices people are doing to get material things, and they're pure devotees doing these sacrifices. I mean, if you look at, Dasarat, didn't he perform a sacrifice so he can have a child? So that's a material thing. So would that be in the mode of passion? Of course, it's not the mode of passion because it's Krishna's plan, Ramachandra's plan. But it may seem like, what?
He needed a son to carry on the religious dynasty.
Yeah, but that's material.
Yeah, but it's
Because it could be spiritual if the dynasty is if it's all devotees. I mean, you could look at it materially or spiritually, but we know, of course, it's spiritual because of who's doing it, and they get the Supreme Lord as their son. Such ceremonial shows of religiosity are not accepted as genuine. So if you just do it to show how religious you are, that's mode of ignorance. And then what happens from these sacrifices? They produce a demoniac mentality, do not benefit human society. Harikasura, he performed this sacrifice, offering his flesh into the fire, so Lord Shiva can give him a benediction. He got the benediction that anyone's head that he touches will crack into pieces, and he'd die. It's like, what a way, that's certainly a mode of ignorance. And of course, he did get the benediction. He wanted to touch Lord Shiva's head. And ultimately, Krishna came in the form of a brahmachari and got him to touch his own head, and he died. So don't do any sacrifices in the mode of passion, and especially don't do any sacrifices in the mode of ignorance. But I don't think any devotees may sometimes do some sacrifices in the mode of passion, but the mode of ignorance, I don't think anybody does. We certainly don't do it just to show how great we are, and we don't really believe in it. We certainly don't do it so we can get some money so we can just completely waste it. Okay, I'll read the translation one more time. Any sacrifice performed without regard for the directions of Scripture, that's first thing, without distribution of prasada, without chanting of Vedic hymns, and remuneration of the priest, and without faith, it's considered to be in the mode of darkness. So we got 2 minutes. Any questions? Okay, we got probably a minute and a half. Any comments? Well, we may end class early.
What are we going to do with 1 minute?
We can do a quick sacrifice.
We could chant Krishna's name.
So no comments, questions? Okay, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
You're welcome.